Today on Ag News Daily.
I think the value for our industry is only going to continue to grow, and not just domestically. There's demand for our fuels globally. We are exporting some of our renewable fuels now as well, so lots of opportunities ahead.
Well, welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show. This is Tanner.
And Delaney.
Oh, it is. It's a new year, and maybe we'd have new hosts. I don't think that's going to happen.
Do you have New Year's resolutions? You're not a resolutions person, are you?
I'm not. No, I'm not. It seems like they all fall apart.
I'm a goal setter person.
Okay.
There's a difference,
goals are good.
Yep.
Yep, I can do goals. My goal was to not shovel any snow, but that's already been broken.
Yes, it certainly has.
We did get snow here in Iowa. The strengthening storm system that brought snow and ice and other severe storms to parts of central and eastern U.S. hit and slid across the country this week. There is more projected into the weekend and early of next week. AccuWeather forecasters warn that several Arctic blasts will bring waves of bitterly cold air through much of the eastern half of the nation starting this weekend. The system could bring some of the lowest January temperatures in 10 years to some parts of the U.S. Chief Meteorologist Bernie Rayno says that we are going to be dealing with some of the coldest air of the season, as well as multiple days of sub-zero temperatures in the northern plains and upper Midwest, even into the Tennessee Valley. Lake effect snow is forecasted to increase as progressively colder air moves across the Great Lakes region. Ice cover on the Great Lakes is well below historical averages, allowing for this cold air to blow across relatively warmer waters and create that lake effect snow. Meanwhile, water levels in the Mississippi and Ohio river systems remain above low water marks, ensuring there is still uninterrupted transportation. So a lot of weather to kick off the beginning of 2025.
Well, as we look at the 2024 year in review, there are the top 10 things that may affect ag once again in 2025. The U.S. agricultural sector, of course, ended 24 in recession, according to many ag economists surveyed by the latest Farm Journal Monthly Monitor. AgWeb.com says 56% of ag economists responded yes to the question of a recession. The newest monthly monitor asked economists what they'll be watching for in the new year. One of those is, of course, the big potential that we might see some tariffs put into place and a prospective tariff trade war, which they say is being downplayed despite published research measuring the expected damage rain. They're also looking at farmer attitudes toward non-traditional land uses, including CRP, solar, and other forms that will help boost farmer incomes. There's also worry about the Brazilian real, which is depreciating and could lead to more U.S. competition. And in 2025, there's a chance that cash rent prices may stay constant despite a downturn in crop prices. As we know, farm incomes have varied greatly by region in 2024, and ag economists say that southern farmers are really struggling, if not maybe struggling the most. So maybe not a super rosy story as we head into 2025, Tanner, but I think it's going to be more of the same for the next year ahead.
Yeah, this is another rosy headline as well. As we reported right before the holidays, we finally got movement on a continuing resolution that was passed to keep the government fully funded through March 14th of 2025. This resolution also includes economic aid for farmers experiencing one of the biggest income drops in many years, like you just reported. As the new session of Congress begins January 3rd, the president-elect Donald Trump will prepare to take office on January 20th. Agriculture remains at crossroads. 2 Farm Bill extensions were passed ahead of being written in 2023 when it was originally expected to be written. Many farm organizations are optimistic, though, that the new Farm Bill could be completed early in 2025. Farmers are grappling with a projected 2-year decline in net farm income, the steepest in U.S. history, while government safety net programs are at their lowest funding levels since 1982. To help with the Economic Loss Assistance Program, has allocated $10 billion in direct payments to farmers, Farm Journal says. While these payment rates weren't final yet, early estimates were out for various commodities. The corn payment for producers is estimated to be just shy of $45 per acre. The soybean payments are estimated at a little over $30 per acre. Wheat farmers will receive just shy of $35 an acre. Cotton growers are estimated to receive a whopping $85 an acre or more, while rice will receive over $70 an acre in total. There are 21 different commodities that are eligible for assistance, and I know, Delaney, those dollar amounts have continued to evolve and may even be changing yet today.
And they should be paid out fairly quickly here, Tanner. But this week we've got quite an action-packed episode, so let's turn things over here to hear our first interview for today. Dan Leo, the owner of Safety Zone Calf Catcher, hearing how it's made locally and now has grown to a global-scaled company.
Well, listeners, I'm excited to share with you a product that just came across the Ag News Daily's email. We really fell in love with the mission, the purpose, and the design of what we're about to talk to. So I'm excited to welcome Dan Leo from Safety Zone Calf Catchers to our podcast. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you. Appreciate being on here.
So where are you calling in from today?
We're located at Dannebrog, Nebraska, which is located in south central Nebraska.
That's great. Is that a big cattle country area?
Actually, yes, Nebraska is one of the big states. We're actually between a lot of cattle and farming areas right where we're located.
That's great. And I remember when we had a chat earlier that you said you were from Iowa. You were from my neck of the woods.
I actually grew up northwest Des Moines, Iowa, as a young farm kid. We had a little diversified operation there. And then I went on to school at South Dakota State University and majored in animal science and ag business, and moved to Nebraska and been out here over 50 years.
Wow. So what have you been doing out there the last 50 years in Nebraska?
Well, we've been in the ranching business and pretty much in the seed stock industry and running anywhere from a couple hundred to over 500 cows. And so that's been our family business, and that's where we've been.
Well, my in-laws have a fat cattle feed yard, but my mother-in-law likes to play with her 10 to 15 head of cows every year. And it seems like whenever they've got a calf, 3 or 4 of us got to go up to help get that calf tagged. But it sounds like you've got a solution to where we might not have to do it like that anymore.
Well, when I was younger, it was easier to do a lot of things. And one of the instinctive natures of the cow is that it's a God-given blessing. Truthfully, the cow instinctively wants to protect her calf. And, back in the younger days, it was easier to go snag the calves, and we had a sled we'd made, and then we had a calf cart that we used a little bit. There's been a calf hook, and there's just always problems. But the big thing is there's dangers. You're always next to that mother cow, and frankly, one year she can be really docile and just doing a nice job mothering her calf, and the next year she could come apart on you, and it just wasn't worth getting hurt.
No, it doesn't. It can be terrifying at times, right? And you love your animals, but you also need to take care of your personal safety.
You're right. And we've had some really close calls over the years. Of course, I can remember back in the day, I'm 77 years old now, back when ear tags first come about. And so then we started tagging calves. And so that was the first step in the process. And at our particular operation, we have a full vaccination program, and we also weigh our calves at birth. And so that takes a little more time, a little more management to make things happen. And every time you're around that cow a little bit more, or that first calf heifer, either one, things can happen. And like one term that a lot of our customers in the Safety Zone calf catcher business talk about being blindsided by a cow. And, sometimes you don't see things coming, and dangers can happen pretty quick.
Yeah, even to the best of ranchers and farmers. So now, obviously, it's a podcast. We're not looking directly at one of your products right now. Can you tell me how it works?
Well, the Safety Zone calf catcher evolved basically, again, out of a need. And we just tried to figure out a way that we could, at that point in time, this goes back some 12, 14 years ago, when we could utilize our four-wheeler. And so I, looked at different types of possibilities, and considering that the cow psychology and how her behavior pattern worked and how we want to stay safe, we developed the calf catcher. So it actually mounts on the left-hand side of the of a four-wheeler or a UTV, either one, and they mount with ball couplers so they can go over any kind of rough terrain or modified terrain to where you're at. And it has a gate that opens on the front that shuts with the ease of a handle. And then we have a calf holder compartment in the back end where we put the calf in the back, and then we can process the calf, and we step from the four-wheeler or the UTV directly into the calf catcher, and we process the calf, and we can take as long or as we need, or we can work as fast as we want. And then when we're all done, we let the calf out the back, and the calf goes on to his mother. If we need to pair the calf out, take him to another pasture or to a cabin barn in cold weather, or maybe send twins, those cows will follow right along.
So, Dan, when you think of the safety zone calf catcher, what is your biggest sales pitch to somebody that is getting ready to take a look at it?
Well, probably the sales pitch, if people call me, I talk to them about safety and being stress-free and not have extra labor around to do the process, and while you're protected all the time. But the real truth of it is our business has grown over the last 12 to 14 years through our customers, because our customers truthfully are our best salesmen. They talk to their neighbors, and when we started this business, we actually started building them for local people because they saw ours and they saw the ones we build, and then that stretched all over the country. And it's been an amazing story to see how this has grown into a worldwide customer base.
Yeah, and that's neat because I did look up a couple of videos to see the evolution of the product, and now it looks like it's even more user-friendly to use.
Yeah, we've made some changes over the years, obviously, in the way we build them and how we construct them. And today we're really, really happy with the final product. Everything is powder coated. Our welding is done in our own shop. We don't outsource anything. And so it's all American made and right here in Nebraska. And they're durable. And we've got one cattleman who's actually a retired engineer in Texas that bought one of these calf catchers, and he made a statement to me one day. He says, Dan, the way you build these calf catchers, he said, my kids' grandkids will still be using it.
That's a huge testament to the way that they're built. So what I can tell from the new, they're mounted to the front of your side-by-sides, and you've got the ability to suspend them so they don't have to run on the ground, but they've also got wheels underneath the pin. I'm going to call it a pin, the part that catches the calf, to where you can run it next to you.
Yeah. Actually, the only way it works is where it's mounted to the front and the back through ball couplers. They'll allow a lot of flexibility. There's two tires on the outside of the calf catcher. One's a main wheel that carries the majority of the weight of the calf catcher itself. And then on the front, we have what we call a caster wheel that really facilitates working through rough, tight ground, down through ditches, ravines, over cornstalk rows, that kind of thing. And it really makes it so it can handle just about any kind of terrain.
So you come up behind that calf and you set it on over the top of them, or it opens up in the front and you can kind of scoop in from behind?
Well, actually, it opens up in the front. Before you get ready to catch the calf, you open up the front gate. And then, of course, if it's a brand new calf that's just laying there, it's pretty easy. Just drive over the top of him. You trip the front gate handle, and it shuts. You step into the calf catcher compartment, and then you go to work. If it's a calf that's on the move, maybe he's a few days old, or quite honest, that we have people that and ourselves that use these calf catchers catching calves that are a month or 2 months or even 3 months older, and you just have to be a little bit more aggressive. But that's not a bit of an issue. You just go up behind them, and when that calf is up alongside that front gate, even if he's running along at a pretty good pace, you just shut that gate. It'll kind of hit him in the nose, and he'll stop. You stop, and you just step right into the calf catcher from either the ATV or the UTV and go to work.
And by design, you treating this calf or tagging this calf are protected from the mother because you've got the calf catcher between her and you and the side-by-sides behind you.
Yeah, you're safe all the time because you're inside the cage along with the calf. The cow's on the outside, and interestingly, as people can see when they watch the video, is the cows are very instinctive how they behave. Is the first thing will happen is they'll wonder what happened to the calf. Then they'll nose around on the outside, looking in, and see their calf. You'll set the calf in the calf holder compartment. Is most all the cows will migrate to the back corner of the calf catcher, and the calf will be standing there, and you'll process him. And the cows are just a lot more calmer when they can see and smell their calf.
Yeah, I can believe that. You mentioned videos. If our listeners want to go see this product in action, how do they go find these videos?
It's at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com.
That's great. And I assume that's the same place they can go to place an order?
Yeah, they can place orders there. And by the way, while they're there, there's a lot of really good testimonials that they can read. We have customers that submit testimonies all the time. We've received, hundreds, quite honestly, probably a couple thousand testimonies over the years, and we try to rotate them through. And our best salesman in the business, quite honestly, is not ourselves. It's the calf catcher itself.
So, Dan, after our audience goes out and visits safetyzonecalfcatchers.com, I'm sure they're going to be looking forward to one of their favorite times of the year. And what do you think that is, Dan?
Well, calving season, obviously, is a time that most people in the cattle industry always look forward to. And, payday's important, but the thing about it is calving time is when you get a look at the new calves, the new genetics, the new first calf at first calves, how well they're doing, this type of thing. And part of our reasoning for having the calf catcher is intention of just making the whole process of calving stress-free, easier on the cow, easier on the calves, and obviously easier on the operator, because keeping everybody safe, protected is really the ultimate importance.
It is. And there's just something about witnessing the miracle of life, no matter what your livestock is that you take care of as a farmer and rancher, that just really leaves you full and that full feeling inside.
That's right. And as long as I've been in the business, I got to tell you that, I always look forward to calving season, and I look forward to, watching the cows and their behavior. And the thing that about this business and agriculture is the good Lord gave these mothers an opportunity to be instinctive, to take care of their young. And, of course, in the cattle business, as we know, and probably with other species likewise, is sometimes cattle are just a little more protective, a little more aggressive, and you just need to avoid any kind of issues. And that's where our calf catcher really comes into play.
I'm glad we got to share that with our audience today. So, Dan, thanks again for joining us on the Ag News Daily Podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, Delaney, that was a fun conversation to have. What a true rancher himself, innovating a product that can provide help to other ranchers. We did see also, due to beneficial ownership, the filing requirement on pause again. Farmers and ranchers facing confusion over the beneficial ownership information reporting requirements have been on a legal roller coaster. As of December 26th, businesses are temporarily exempt from filing BOI reports due to late-night decision by the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit Court to delay the mandate indefinitely. This comes just days after the court briefly reinstated ahead of the January 1st deadline on December 23rd. The American Farm Bureau Federation and National Cattlemen's Beef Association have expressed frustration over the back and forth rulings. Kent Backus, NCBA's Executive Director of Government Affairs, says shifting decisions add to the confusion and urges cattle producers to consult with their attorneys and tax professionals for updates. Backus also emphasized that the NCBA's push for permanent legislation to exempt cattle producers from what they call a burdensome mandate. I know the text group that I have that has my CPA and attorney in it has really been frustrating with the back and forth as well.
I just went ahead and filed them at this
You're
point.
just done with it. Under BOI rules, as they currently stand, businesses that fail to file or update records could face fines of up to $10,000 or additional civil penalties of $591 per day, possibly even felony charges with up to 2 years in prison. So we'll continue to keep you guys updated when we know more, but we know that Delaney won't go to jail.
Well, Tanner, we've got once again more port labor disputes, on both coasts, affecting red meat exports. U.S. agriculture is bracing for a possible work stoppage at East and Gulf Coast ports, a situation that could severely disrupt those American red meat exports. Contract negotiations between the International Longshoremen's Association and the U.S. Maritime Alliance stalled in mid-November over disputes about automation, with very little progress being made since. While a tentative agreement on wages was reached back in October, the temporary contract extension is set to expire on January 15th. The U.S. Meat Export Federation says this uncertainty is already having an impact. President Dan Hallstrom reports that ocean carriers are imposing surcharges just in anticipation of a strike, forcing exporters to divert shipments where possible. East and Gulf Coast ports handle about 45% of U.S. pork exports and 30% of beef exports by water, making their role critical to the agricultural supply chain, of course, amongst many other commodities. But in particular, the meat has been the focus for this potential strike.
I think I'm going to increase my rates for hosting this just with the anticipation of a strike, Delaney. Well, we also saw that the U.S. is on pace to surpass 5 billion gallons of biodiesel and renewable diesel consumption for the first time ever. So there's a lot of opportunities for renewable fuel and the uses for it, but it doesn't come without challenges. We recently heard a panel discussion from leaders in this space at the National Association of Farm Broadcasting Convention. Jeff Cooper, President and CEO of the Renewable Fuels Association, shares some of the concerns that could be limiting these opportunities.
Where we have some concern about falling behind is around the innovation side, SAF, other new uses. We look at, the Brazilians are all too eager to take the lead in developing sustainable aviation fuels. The Europeans are trying to take the lead. So we've got to have the right tax policy in place. We've got to have supportive, growing renewable fuel standards. We've got to have the right state level policies to make sure that we don't fall behind when it comes to that kind of next chapter for renewable fuels here in the U.S.
Well, Tanner, Cooper also says there are some struggles communicating with fuel retailers due to the uncertainties for E15 and year-round E15 in particular.
The federal government is telling retailers, go out and invest in E15, put in the infrastructure, we'll help you pay for it. And then on the other hand, you've got the federal government telling those same retailers, you can't sell this fuel for 3.5 months every year. So there is a real disconnect there. I think everybody knows that. There's bipartisan support to get this done. We even have the support of the American Petroleum Institute to get this done. So it's just a matter of finding the right path forward legislatively to get it done.
Donnell Ray Hagan, the Clean Fuels Alliance of America CEO, says that another challenge is the topic of cooking oil, and it's his take on that issue.
It's a difficult position for us. And as an industry, we were founded by this country's soybean farmers 30 years ago. Our job was to take this domestic soybean oil and give it a higher value and make it, worth something more for farmers to allow soybean production to increase. So you fast forward 30 years later, we've done a great job of doing that. Our industry has doubled in size and production in the last 4 years, I should say. And so because of that, we are now importing feedstock that we did not need before. I wish we didn't need it. I honest to God wish we didn't need it. But the domestic feedstocks that are available for us would limit us to somewhere a little bit less than 4 billion gallons a year of our fuel production.
And Kaylee Buller, president and CEO of the National Oilseed Processors Association, also shares her perspective on cooking oils in particular.
So there's no doubt there's a skyrocketing amount of imports coming in. Danelle and I both agree with that. If you look back the last 20 years, we've seen about 5 billion pounds of imports. If you look to the last 2 years, we've seen about 12 billion pounds, and that includes used cooking oil and tallow. Yes, over 30% of that does come from China. And so from a NOPA perspective, we are not opposed to the imports. What we have been pushing up to this date is a domestic feedstock requirement to ensure that U.S. tax credits go to U.S. and domestic industry.
Well, we know there are a lot of conversations that are happening in this space, adding more value to crop growers. We'll hear more from Ray Hagan when the Clean Fuels Alliance of America in a separate one-on-one interview here in just a bit.
Well, Tanner, amongst all the holiday craziness, that didn't stop the U.S. and Mexico from continuing to discuss their ongoing dispute. The U.S. has won its dispute under the USMCA agreement over Mexico's restrictions on genetically engineered corn. A USMCA panel ruled in favor of the U.S. on all 7 legal claims, finding that Mexico's measures were not based on science and violated the market access terms agreed to in the trade pact. The panel's final report, issued just before Christmas on December 20th, gives Mexico 45 days to comply with the findings. Mexico is the largest export market for U.S. corn, with $4.8 billion in exports from January through October of 2024, so a big win here for U.S. producers.
Yeah, that definitely is a big win. Hopefully a big jump here as we get into 2025. And as we said, our last interview in today's episode for Ag News Daily, our reporter and producer, Michelle Stangler, had a one-on-one conversation with the Clean Fuels Alliance America CEO. Again, this conversation happened late last year at the National Association of Farm Broadcasting Convention, where they talk about what the organization does, where the industry is at with some ag policy issues, and more. Here it is. Let's get into that conversation after this message from Calf Catchers.
Calving season is a favorite time of year, but along with that special time are dangers, extra stress, and increased labor. Safety Zone Calf Catchers are all about safety and making processing new calves easier. Designed for ATVs or UTVs, one person can do the job and never be threatened by the protective mother cow. Make this and every calving season safer and easier with a Safety Zone Calf Catcher. Watch videos and customer testimonials or order yours today at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com. or call 877-505-0914. Affordable and made in the USA. Make your upcoming and all future calving seasons safer, easier, and stress-free. Durable and designed to work anywhere you can drive your ATV or UTV. Order online at safetyzonecalfcatchers.com or call 877-505-0914 today.
We're here with the CEO of the Clean Fuels Alliance America, Don L. Rehagen. Thank you so much for joining us. So just give us an overview of who is the Clean Fuels Alliance America.
Yeah, Clean Fuels Alliance America is a national trade association. We're headquartered in Missouri. We were founded by the nation's soybean farmers about 30 years ago to find a value-added market for soybean oil. And we found that in the product of biodiesel. So we've grown, and now we see fuels like renewable diesel, sustainable aviation fuel, all using soybean oil and a handful of other feedstocks as well to produce some of the cleanest fuels in the planet. So our trade association represents the whole spectrum, all the way from growers in the field all the way through fuel suppliers and retailers.
So let's talk about these past, let's say, 5 years. What does the industry look like?
Oh, we've more than doubled in size in the last 5 years. We're now a 5 billion gallon a year industry. So we have some significance in the fuel pool, and so we're very proud about that. We bring the cleanest fuels in the planet, decarbonizing transportation here in the United States. So we've got a lot of partners that are seeking those decarbonization opportunities that our fuels bring. We're in the medium and heavy duty sector. So it's not your cars or your light duty pickups. You'll find us in over the road trucks, rail and marine operations.
Let's talk about some of the policy that is really impacting what you guys are all doing.
You know, for us, the renewable fuel standard, the federal renewable fuel standard, is kind of the deal setter for us. It establishes volumes of our renewable fuels that need to be blended into the fuel stream. And so we are coming up on 2025 here, where that will be set again for a period of time going forward. So for us, it's important that the EPA sort of get that right and make sure those volumes they set for the next period kind of matches where our production capabilities are as an industry, because that sets the tone for the demand for our fuel. So RVOs are very important. And then the tax credit that has been in place for our industry for over 20 years is significantly changing here in January. And so getting the guidance out of the Treasury Department as to how that will be implemented is extremely critical as well. So those are probably two of the biggest impactors that we have right here, right now.
Let's talk about the history of the 45Z tax credit as it's supposed to be implemented here January 1, but let's talk about the past. What did that look like?
Sure. Yeah, well, in the past, the tax credit was under 40A, which was a blender's credit, $1 a gallon for every gallon of fuel that was blended into the diesel pool. So it was pretty easy to figure out, right? But now 45Z is going to take a carbon reduction perspective and assign carbon scores to each of the feedstocks used to make our fuels. And the value of the credit will depend on the carbon reduction elements. So all of a sudden it's created a little bit of an uneven playing field. And so we'll sort through that as an industry. We always do, but it's a matter of knowing, and that's where we're at 45 days out. We just do not know what those rules are. Treasury has not submitted those yet. And so it's a challenge for industry right now.
So then what are you planning for? How do you know those rules when you don't know them?
Well, that's the problem. We don't know them. And of course, our producers are buying now for fuel they're going to produce in January and February and March. And so the challenge is defining what those feedstocks are worth based on what the value of that finished fuel is going to be. And those decisions are being made now, and we don't have the benefit of knowing those values. So it's really putting a crimp in our style from a producer standpoint. We're starting to see fuel producers scale back production a little bit just because of that uncertainty.
Well, perhaps let's speculate a little bit. What happens, come springtime? Does this increase a lot of the demand? Does this allow a lot of producers to maybe get an extra buck into their wallets?
Well, it's probably not going to be a buck anymore. It looks like, again, depending on the feedstock that's used, it's going to be some portion of that. Again, the marketplace will always sort through those kinds of things. It's just this uncertainty of not knowing. So the sooner we can find that out, the sooner our producers can make the decisions that they need to make in order to produce those fuels. We just don't want to see the fuel production cut back. The country needs these fuels. They actually add value at the pump. They reduce the price of gasoline and diesel fuel at the pump. So there's a lot of benefits that our fuels bring, and we just don't want to see ourselves needing to cut back on production.
Let's talk about some of the gasoline and, that's in the market, our renewable fuels. Percentages-wise, compared to the petroleum, how has that grown these past 4 or 5 years?
Yeah, I mentioned we're a 5 billion gallon a year industry. That's about 9% of the entire nation's diesel pool. But more impressive to me than that even is in California, we are over 75% of the diesel pool in the entire state of California. So biodiesel, renewable diesel is the premier fuel there. In fact, if you were looking to try to buy a gallon of straight diesel fuel in California right now, you'd probably have a hard time finding it. So lots of opportunities for us, and we just need that clarity in policy to make sure that we continue doing what we've already been doing.
So now this is, beyond what farmers are doing at the farm, but there are those practices. Why should farmers care about some of the work that you all are doing?
Well, we were formed out of the agriculture industry. As I mentioned, the soybean farmers of this country had this vision, and they've established the biodiesel industry and now renewable diesel and sustainable aviation fuel. So by adding value to the oil portion of the soybean, we've added value to the soybean. And so that's an incredible opportunity for farmers, and we're very proud to be carrying on that tradition, that vision they had to grow this industry and add value to what they do.
Is the oil comparable to the meal itself, more value?
Well, soybean oil is growing in value in relation to the value of the bean. And a lot of it is because of our industry and the growth of this industry. And so anything that adds value to agriculture is, I think, a good thing for everybody here in this country. And like I said, we're proud to be part of that.
In a year where there's a lot of prices and some of those elements, how is this helping at the farm gate level?
Well, the value for our industry, the renewable fuel industry for soybeans, has been calculated to be $1.30 a bushel. on an average price of soybeans. And so that value obviously goes up and down, but it's a substantial amount of value that's created by this industry pulling more soybean oil into it and creating that value. So the investment farmers have made over the years has begun paying back in a big way for them, and it's something that we're proud of.
So we've talked about the 45Z tax credits. We've talked about some of that. Is there anything else that you're watching on the political level, especially with the election now over?
Yeah, well, more so than the election, I mentioned California and our presence there. And California is the largest consumer of our fuels. About 2 out of every 3 gallons of our fuels go to the state of California. And that's how we hit that 75% target where we are now. We hope to be 100% of the diesel pool in California. But they're incentivizing our fuels in California through the low carbon fuel standard. And so one of the things we're watching there is where's California going with the adoption and use of veg oil based renewable fuels. Some of the folks in California have a little bit of a problem with that, and we don't want to see that happen. We need to have full access to all of our feedstocks. So that's a very important thing that we're watching as well. But you asked specifically about the election, so you're pimping me a little bit, right? We're looking for some good things. I mean, every administration has its benefits, and I think everybody is seeing renewable fuels across the spectrum. We've enjoyed a lot of bipartisan support for our fuels over the years, and so we're excited to be sitting down and educating a new administration, somewhat of a new administration, right? But a lot of new people on what the benefits are of our industry to agriculture, but also to the climate.
Are you expecting anything related to fuels that may go in a different direction come at the beginning of the year?
Well, energy is important to every economy, not just in the United States, but globally. I've always said we're blessed here in the United States to have access to a lot of energy sources that are very reasonably compared to a lot of other countries. And so I think the value for our industry is only going to continue to grow, and not just domestically. There's demand for our fuels globally. We are exporting some of our renewable fuels now as well. So lots of opportunities ahead.
Are you watching the exports? Could that come be a change come at the beginning of the year?
Well, I don't know if the beginning of the year matters as much as just the growing demand for cleaner transportation fuels globally. We have always been a leader in energy production in the United States, gasoline and diesel fuel, and exporting those products to other countries. We're seeing the same thing now with our renewable fuels. And so especially as sustainable aviation fuel production starts to pick up in the United States, we'll definitely be watching that export market to see where those fuels land.
Now, there was a recent announcement of some kind of new plant or a lot of headway making for SAF. Where are we at today with SAF?
Yeah, I would say this year you're going to see less than 100 million gallons of SAF produced in the United States, plus or minus a little bit. But I think next year that number will quadruple at least. So we're at the very beginning stages of SAF production in this country, but the demand is already there. The airlines want these fuels and they want them now. And so the production industry is catching up to that. But again, it all goes back to federal policy and the policies that create the certainty that makes the investments needed for a SAF plant, make them a logical investment.
Now, as a trade organization, are you one to help initiate those conversations with those airlines?
Well, we've been involved with the airlines, but we've been involved with the fuel producers as well. And so we all have to work together. And it's been the same way with biodiesel and renewable diesel. You have to have the demand side and the supply side working together. And we're definitely doing that in the sustainable aviation fuel area as well.
We're talking a lot of different things regards to fuels. We mentioned the national level. We mentioned California. Are there any other states that are really of interest to your trade organization?
Well, all of them are, but particularly the states in the Midwest. We have a lot of biodiesel production in the Midwest, and there are a number of states there that have put into place different types of incentive programs for either using the fuel, producing the fuel, distributing the fuel. And those programs are very important to keeping the demand for all three of these fuels kind of balanced. And so, we're play a big role in helping those kind of policies materialize. We usually work alongside stakeholders in those states that want to see something specific that works for their state. And that's a role that we play as well as a National Trade Association.
Were there any state ballot initiatives that you were watching in regards to fuels?
There was nothing this year that we were watching.
Great. Well, thank you so much for adding anything about fields here in our conversation today. Is there anything else that you would like to mention?
I think you hit them all. I appreciate it.
That was Don L. Rehagen here with the Clean Fuels Alliance America, just talking a lot about fuels.
Well, Delaney, after the news that we had to kick off 2025, what are we seeing happening in the markets this week?
Well, we're certainly seeing actually a lot of news in the commodity markets. We saw here the US dollar has hit fresh highs since the fall of 2022, which has put pressure on both grains and oilseeds, in particular wheat. Recapping the 2024 season, grain and oilseeds saw, as we know, a tough year. Soybeans were 22% lower year over year, Chicago wheat 21% lower, cotton about 19% lower, and corn nearly 15% lower. Livestock, meanwhile, had a strong year, putting in 16% gains year over year in hogs and 12% gains in the cattle markets. Next week, we've got a huge WASDE report ahead of us as we'll see final 2024 production numbers and South American adjustments potentially as well, as we see expanding dryness in South America. Currently, Argentina is sitting at about 20 to 30% of their crop under drought stress, but that's expected to expand to 50% by mid-January. In Brazil, about 15% of the crop is under stress, also expecting to see an increase in mid-January to about 30%. And cattle kicked off the new year with a great trading day. The first session of the new year on Thursday brought strong prices out of the chute here. So all in all, a mixed bag for agriculture. But, the big win with the USMCA debate there is corn is going to continue going to Mexico. We've got some question marks, of course, around what the Trump administration will do stepping into office. But all in all, I think folks are buckling down for another tight year. But perhaps we'll get some added news we weren't expecting.
Yeah, hopefully everything turns out well. Of course, optimism is always high at the beginning of the year, and listeners, that's the same way for Ag News Daily. Stay tuned with us. We'll have more great interviews in 2025, and we're excited to share those with you. But for today, what do you say, Delaney? Should we let the listeners go?
Let's let them go.